Hello, you're tuned into Coast to Coast Real Estate with JSteib. This podcast will take us all across the globe as we learn the ins and outs of real estate from the industry's top advisors. Here we are now with JSteib.
Welcome to Coast Real Estate, broadcasting simultaneously from the beautiful city of Manhattan Beach, California, and Hillsborough, Sonoma County, California. In today's episode, we will get to know Michael Fanelli. He is an amazing agent and an amazing person. Without further ado, allow me to introduce you to Michael. He is part of our Sotheby's family. Michael, welcome and thank you for being here with me today.
I can't tell you what a pleasure it is to be here. Thank you so very much.
Please tell our listeners a little bit about you. And I have to say, happy anniversary. I know you just had an anniversary.
Oh, yeah. Well, it's kind of an anniversary. It's kind of a mini anniversary, I guess. I met my wife 25 years ago yesterday. It was just, 25 years, that's not for me. That's not very long.
My husband and I will be celebrating our 20th wedding anniversary on June.
We were June 7th. How about you?
June 9th.
Oh, wow. So our wedding anniversaries are very close to one another. I knew there was something I liked about you.
Now, tell me about you.
So, my background. So this is my 25th year in the business of real estate. I got my start in San Francisco doing, urban real estate, primarily in the north end of the city, in the Pacific Heights and Russian Hill and that area. But I really did all of San Francisco. So again, this is my 25th year, but it's my second career. My first career, I spent 17 years in sports marketing. I have an athletic background. I've been a runner competitively in track and field ever since I was a youngster. I ran my first marathon when I was 16 years old. I won't tell you what year that was because it's a very long time ago. And I actually won first place, the San Francisco Pacific Rim Marathon, 2 years in a row, back to back. Additional background was I was the head coach of the United States national track and field team. Took the United States team to compete in Japan twice and in Korea once. And I was able to morph that athletic background and my educational background in marketing to a 17-year career in sports marketing. Did a extensive stint in the Reebok International, their marketing department back in the heyday in the 80s, back when, aerobics was king and that sort of thing. We actually overtook Nike in sales one year. It's the only year that's ever taken place. And it was really, part of our entire marketing team. So that was quite exciting. And then I represented athletes. Largely is what I did was work with world-class athletes in their sponsorship deals. When I left Reebok, I actually just changed hats like you do in a real estate. One moment you might be representing a seller, and then you change hats, and another moment you're representing a buyer. So I was able to do that same thing. And instead of representing footwear companies to athletes, then I was representing athletes to get their shoe deals. So I was doing what, if you ever saw the movie Jerry Maguire, I was an agent. That actually tended to morph quite well. Those skill sets morph quite well into what we do here today in real estate. That's kind of how I transitioned from one career to another.
Sounds like you had a fabulous life shaping the USA team, people who have dreams of representing their country and doing it at the top, achieving their best.
It's interesting. One of those other skill sets that you mentioned is meeting really important, famous people and that sort of thing. And when you first meet maybe in my case, athletes who were my childhood heroes and then ended up working with them and or representing them, it takes a bit to wrap your head around that. And that's not that dissimilar to when you meet this client of yours, your new client, who is, either incredibly wealthy or very famous or very successful in business or otherwise, to get comfortable putting yourself on the same plane as them. Interesting that you should mention that. That's a nice, interesting parallel for sure.
You can relate every time you meet a new person who is hoping you will help them with this transaction, buying real estate. You feel like, okay, let me figure out how I fit with you. I know I can help you and you will be super satisfied. It's just the uncomfortable getting to know each other within the beginning.
Look at it as, first of all, obviously gaining rapport and their respect. And you do that, with your communication skills and your knowledge and your preparedness, correct? And then you really wrapping your head around the fact that this is an opportunity for inspiration and an opportunity to learn something. And if you're all about learning about them rather than tooting your own horn, it's amazing what it'll do, for your rapport and also for your insights going forward, particularly if you're dealing with highly successful people. How did they get there? What was their path? What can you learn from this? And, perhaps you can impart wisdom to them. Obviously, they're trusting you with, the sale of one of their, if not their largest asset.
Tell me, how do you ended up living in this beautiful space you're in right now?
Oh, it's been really tough. It's really to morph into wine country has been like a really brutal path, I have to tell you. Now, seriously, I became interested in wine when living in San Francisco many years ago, started coming up to wine country to do wine tasting. It was a very different environment then, but I would go up to Napa in particular and taste Cabernets and even Merlots, Merlot. And I just really appreciated it. I appreciated the beauty of it. I appreciated the business of it. And it just became one of those dream things, one of those things you held in the back of your head. Boy, one day I'd really like to live in wine countries. When I got into the business of real estate about 19 years ago, my wife and I bought a weekend home that we thought was going to be a very temporary home just for weekends and, that sort of thing to take the edge off, and we up here in wine country. Well, that weekend home has eventually morphed into our primary residence, and we've been here full time for about 8 years or so. Prior to that time, I only did the business in the big city in San Francisco, and I didn't do business up here. I referred all my business up here, and then once we moved up here, you had to kind of basically recreate yourself, right? And tap into a very proprietary real estate community. It was the interesting path and really kind of fun. I find that if you Goethe, a great German philosopher, his quote in particular, I carried in my wallet for many years, and said that boldness has genius, power, and magic in it. Boldness has genius, power, and magic in it. So when you make a bold decision like that, don't worry about the end result. Let the pieces fall into place. And so that's kind of what I did, was just kind of detach myself from the end result, reinvented myself here in wine country. And now that's pretty much all I do. And I couldn't tell you how much fun it is and how interesting it is and how every single transaction is truly a mutually exclusive event.
I love that quote. I have to say, I wrote it down. Besides the grapes and their delicious juice, what do you like the most about the city you live in right now?
The transactions that I do, they're challenging in an extraordinarily different way than the urban challenges. In San Francisco, for instance, a big part of our challenge was often about tenant occupancy, as 77% of the residents of San Francisco are renters. The lobby of tenants is very, very strong. We had those kinds of challenges in San Francisco. When you list a property in July or August, if it has a Golden Gate Bridge view, guess what? It disappears because it's nothing but fog. So every environment has got its own different challenges. Here, we deal with all of our properties, we're not on city services. There's septic most of the time. There's wells. There's those sorts of things. Obviously, we've had challenges here regionally with the global warming, instigating fires and that sort of thing. So that creates insurance challenges. What I like about the area, though, is which your actual question was the blending of beautiful architecture and incredible indoor-outdoor. The visual here is really pretty. The light is really pretty. When I think of beautiful light, I think of Santa Fe. I think of New Mexico and the land of enchantment. But we too here in wine country have extraordinary light. The early morning light, which I capture every day, is incredible. And then, and the gloaming is also. So I love the indoor, outdoor, the natural, and the way it meets extraordinary architecture.
It sounds beautiful. You just painted a picture and I want to be there. For the sunrise and the sunset, take me back to your favorite childhood memory.
Wow. Well, that's interesting. I don't really have a whole lot of, memories of my childhood, candidly, other than getting in a lot of trouble. That was kind of like the main MO, was to get in trouble, which is where I learned how to run, because I had to run a lot. True. I grew up in Philadelphia, which is an entirely different, deal. It's it's kind of rough and tumble. It's a survival of the fittest sort of thing. Really, seriously. I didn't just go to the drugstore to get something from my mom. I had to plan out how I was going to get from point A to point B, and how I was going to figure out, where's the path of least resistance. So it's a different way to grow up. It's entirely different than my lifestyle today. But it's always good skill sets to have in your back pocket. You have to always be thinking and strategizing. If I had to say a favorite memory, growing up in Philadelphia was probably when my dad would take me to see the Philadelphia Phillies play at old Connie Mack Stadium. That was pretty cool. That was a really big deal at the time. So I was that kid that visioned. I read a lot as a kid, and I was interested in adventure. I read Huckleberry Finn and Tom Sawyer multiple times. Gave me that sense of wanderlust, and I was the kid that said, like, the moment that I have the capacity to move on, I shall. And I graduated from high school, and within a couple of weeks, I was gone, and I've actually never lived back there ever since. Nice place to be from. It's nice to have it in your back pocket, but I'm a moving forward sort of.
Your path and all of the things you just mentioned brought me back a lot of my own childhood. I grew up in Guadalajara, Mexico, and I had the same story about the pharmacy thing. My mom used to ask me to go, and I was like, no.
Yeah. I know where it is, but how do you get there?
It wasn't that far. It was really 2 blocks, but they were surrounded by a little gang of bullies that were essentially my age, and I was like, oh my God, do I really have to go? And man, tell me one thing. When you decided to make that transition into real estate, who was your number one supporter?
Well, interestingly, I had never really considered it, but there was a gentleman just a couple of years older than me that I competed against. He was another athlete. We were on separate teams, and candidly, I didn't really like him. I really enjoyed, whooping his butt, in competition. It's like, I'm fiercely competitive in that way. At any rate, he saw some skill set in me, and it was kind of a people skills sort of thing. And he said he owned a real estate company. His family had owned a real estate company. So he was the head broker of a small independent. And he wanted me to come to work for him. And he would bug me about it. And I said, no, that's not my deal. I'm not going to be a realtor. At any rate, he convinced me to, well, at least, consider it. And so I took the principles class, and I did that, and it was, easy breezy, right? And I stuck it away somewhere. A number of years later, 5 or 6 years later, when I got tired of doing all the travel that I did professionally in my previous career, started to revisit, what I was going to do. And I asked him if his offer was still good about doing real estate and becoming a realtor. One thing led to another. I ended up getting my license, but I never did go to work for him.
Is this how you?
But without that inspiration, I probably would never have gone into this business. I don't think I would have.
See, sometimes we look at those people who are performing better than us so we can improve. And then we discover, oh, they have this thing that perhaps I need to work on. I'm sure that's what he saw in you. He has this, and that's why he keeps on winning.
Well, I was flattered that he was interested in having me work with him, given our background, and it was again flattering just that he thought I had the skill sets, and then we became fairly rapidly. I had a pretty rapid ascension in the business. He was coming to look at my listings and that sort of thing. It was just kind of this really kind of funny thing. Here's my mentor, bringing me offers on properties. It was kind of fun. But we've celebrated each other's successes over the years, and we've actually become way better friends. And again, so that's we actually became pretty good friends over the last 15 or so years, and we celebrate each other's victories. And we both have that belief that it's a world of abundance. And we're there's plenty to go around for everybody in this business. And that's an important concept to embrace.
Hey, what is meant for you, nobody could take away. Hey, how did you join the Sotheby's family?
In San Francisco, I was part of a brokerage called Pacific Union, extraordinary brokerage.